Yesterday, I quietly celebrated the vigils of Holy Saturday in what remains of a place of prayer not far from the Hermitage, Mellifont, the old Mellifont. And I was deeply moved by the words of an ancient author read at the second reading. It explains how there is silence in the air. All is still. The whole world is still and waiting, indeed somewhat puzzled. It then goes on to take the reader and the listener, and this has happened century after century since the early church because of its antiquity, into what happened in the underworld at that point. It presents the second Adam going with his trophy, his wounds, into the underworld, that nether gloom, that world of shades and uncertainty, that antechamber, that place of waiting, and seeks out the first of our parents, Adam, and says to him, "Arise, you sleeper, and let Christ shine on you." And he extends his now healed wounds to him, and Adam cries out to all in that place of waiting, "The Lord be with you." Interesting. And the Lord is presented as drawing him forth. Now remember, just before that point, we had been listening to those words from the cross, "It is accomplished." And the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The Sancta Sanctorum was open, and if you've seen the film of Mel Gibson, you can see the old order crumbling. The high priest doesn't know what's happening. And we have that word, tetelestai, it is accomplished, it is finished. And the Lord, in the Gospel of St. John, dies in command. He chooses his last breath. The old expression, he gives up the ghost. But before then, we have, and it's well presented in that film, that ancient iconographic picture of the Lord slightly leaned to one side with tender eyes. At La Trappe, Fermat de Bernard had managed to put that into a three-dimensional icon which has gone around the world. "Tu seras avec moi dans le paradis." Today, you will be with me in paradise. And it is possible. He gave a plenary indulgence by making that cross his purgatory. And he could follow him now into the open gates of paradise. Hence, Adam could be drawn out. This happens to be the day, the 17th of April, when my dear father went into that beyond. It was actually just the beginning of Divine Mercy Sunday, years ago. And when a dear soul goes out of reach and opens its eyes into that horizon, we somehow ourselves draw very close to it. Dad, what can you see? A dear friend of mine who had helped me in college with the Hebrew notes, was brilliant, was doing a doctorate, then became an Anglican clergywoman, and then became a Catholic. That's not the story. She sent me, after my father's death, what she had made, in Welsh of course, my in view, a cross with these words on it, "He is alive." It was Eastertide. And I've never forgotten the sermon which one of our great lecturers gave one time. He was somebody who would preach in the old Welsh style. And he came out with this. I went to hear him because he was such a good preacher. It was during the war. He was studying for the ministry in Wales, of course, and he was on the farm, and it was in the heart of that terrible Second World War. And somebody came down the farm lane with a telegram from the Ministry of Defence. His brother, missing, presumed dead. He's gone. But there was still a hope. Presumed. And they clung on to that hope. But week went into week, and month into month. And as he put it in Welsh, the grip became less and less strong. Some months later, down that same alley came a telegram. And he was studying up in his room, but he heard from underneath his mother shouting those words I just mentioned in Welsh. "My view!" His brother was alive. I went back to Mellifont this night, but to New Mellifont, risen again. And they wanted initially to take the stones of the church, they started to mark them, and they were going to build the new Mellifont with the old stones of the Abbey Church. It never actually happened. But there, the liturgy essentially, in all its certain simplicity, was the same. And then I went, on the way back, up the hill of Slane. And I felt time stood still. For there, in 4:31 or thereabouts, Patrick stood and lit that fire at Easter. And the Druid on the hill of Tara muttered, "If that fire stays kindled until dawn, it will never be put out." And that same Druid became the first bishop of Slane, St. Erc. The flame. Now, I was pausing this morning at dawn on the whole stillness and the mystery of what happened in that night, when precisely after claiming all, he was able then to appear. What actually happened? Scientists will tell you that the Holy Shroud that we have gives us the moment essentially of death frozen. And there is still blood, and we can be sure that it is the blood of the Saviour on it. It is pain, and they're able to detect all the elements of the pain through very clever scientific research. But this image is less well known. In the last years of his pontificate, good Pope Benedict somehow switched on to this. He wanted that the face of God be known, and often towards the end of his pontificate spoke about it. There is a German hermit living all her life next to this, that it may be honoured and known, and has published work on it, and there has been great scientific work done on it in recent years. This can actually be perfectly superimposed on the other face. There is this difference. This is the Sudarium, of which actually the chant, the sequence spoke, Sudarium et vestes, the napkin, spoken of in the Gospel. This is the one that was directly over the face. Now, the experts tell us that what we have here is the moment of burst of energy, the same which left its print on the Holy Shroud, but which here is the very moment of the opening of the eyes from sleep. Just opening. No word is spoken. The angels do it all. And by the way, the Roman soldiers saw things happening, but they had to zip it, and they were paid to do so. They saw an earthquake and great tremor, and an angel of great brilliance rolled away the stone and sat upon it. The angels can have power, physical power. So I paused on this as the sun was just about to rise this morning, and I betook myself to the Holy Sepulchre. I have been more than once, and of which I've much read. I'll talk next Sunday about what happens there, because I believe it's next Sunday that will be completely one as a Christian body throughout the world. I believe we're 1 week ahead of our Eastern brethren. That's for next week. But I'll just add this in anticipation. Do you know that ultra-sensitive equipment has picked something up in scientific research in the complex of the Holy Sepulchre? Not only on Holy Saturday, but throughout the year, there is a continuous pulse of inexplicable energy all around that sacred spot on earth. And do you know that also a similar thing has been picked up in the context of the Blessed Sacrament? Some years ago, a person was dying in hospital. I believe it was in the States. And some people were doing some research on the energy levels in a soul that is about to die and what happens. They were given permission to come and, with a screen, not to be seen or disturb anyone, to put on their very powerful equipment and to pick up all the energy levels around, and something very strange happened. At a certain point, a movement of energy was seen to happen, and at a certain very defined point, the energy levels of the dying person shot up before he petered out. It turned out that the instrument was picking up the passage of the Blessed Sacrament towards and into the dying person. It's the same power! I just conclude. All has been done to make fun of what we have of evidence. Do you know that before dying, one of the top men in the whole field of study of the Holy Shroud, a neutral scientist picked something up and was determined, before he petered out from the cancer he was dying from, to get this out. It's this. He was able to prove conclusively, just with neutral evidence, that what had happened in that famous carbon dating was this, and he's able to prove it clearly. Because of a fire way back in the Middle Ages, nuns had come and very dexterously prepared and remingled a perfectly matching garment to cover up what had been burned, essentially around it. And he was able to prove, going in through microscopic investigation, to the very stitches and material involved. And his intuition turned out to be bang on. The very area which they had analysed was the very one which was magnificently restored by these holy nuns. But it could only be seen microscopically, and the dating that came out would correspond perfectly to that bit. It was a contaminated bit of the shroud. Satan poked fun at his Saviour and Lord. In his case, he's not his Saviour. And the whole world smiled with the smile of reason. Remember the scene on the television. Later, possibly the same satanic force tried to poke fun at it again. There was a massive fire in the cathedral in Turin when I was in Italy. Massive! I don't know how. And there was no human means that they could in any way get into that inferno of flames and bang open the massive steel protecting shield around the Holy Shroud and save it. It was just humanly impossible. A few days later, appeared before 50 million Italian viewers a young fireman who was involved at the crucial moment. He was just an ordinary neutral fireman. And he told the whole of Italy what happened. I felt a massive power pushing me into the flames and giving me a supernatural power which I had no means of claiming or having, to bang open the burning casket. It was completely beyond my power to do. And the whole of Italy stood back in amazement. The Lord protected himself. I just conclude, my friends. This is a cosmic moment, and science is trying to get to the bottom of it. We don't know exactly what happened, but it was something similar, they say, to what happened at the moment of creation of all. Let there be light!